Another FPL game week starting in just 48 hours, but we've got more yellow flags. Gabriel is officially back. What should we be doing now? We've got our second half of the season chips, and who should we be looking to target with some of the upcoming fixtures and a bit more long-term planning? These are my first thoughts and first transfer plans for not only me, but potentially players you should be considering buying. What transfers are worth it now that none of us have really got any left. If you're any position like me with just one transfer and things I definitely need to sort out and still flags in my team. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim, and subscribe if you are new around here. But before we get into the FPL, a very happy new year to you all. 2026 is officially here, and I hope you all have a fantastic year and everything goes your way and you get what you want, not only from an FPL point of view, and we get lots of green arrows and hopefully less injuries to our teams like we've had over the past couple of weeks. But outside of that, I hope 2026 is a great year for you all. But I also want to say a massive thank you to all the support that you showed on the channel in 2025. The channel itself on YouTube and all other platforms has come absolutely on leaps and bounds in the past year from when I was sat here this time in 2025 or the end of 2024. And it's all because of you. Whether you've been subscribing for a week, if you've been subscribed for 5+ years, I want to know in the comments. And this is a massive thank you to you all. And as I said, I hope 2026 gives you everything that you want it to. Also, outside of FPL, 2025 was a huge year for me. And I've never felt the love and support from you all than I have done over the past year. Of course, it was the year that I got married. The most memorable, the most fantastic, incredible, all the adjectives, the most amazing year of my life. And the amount of love and support that you all showed just put that cherry on top of the cake. So again, thank you once again. But I'm also aware that lots of you just follow me because you want FPL advice, and occasionally you like to see what's going on in my life, but you're really here to hopefully help improve your ranks. And as a result, I've decided in 2026, with lots more things and changes coming in my life as I'm sort of 27, lots going on potentially over the next year, next 2 years in my life, and I just quite like sharing it with you. I've decided to launch a sort of side Instagram account called Life with Harry. If you want to go and follow it, if you want to subscribe there will be a link in the description. You won't be getting any FPL advice there. I won't be telling you who to buy. I won't be telling you who to captain. You might see a bit of an emotional reaction to a good pick or a bad pick if you're lucky over there, but that's going to be more sort of my general life. If you're interested in that, great. I would absolutely love any support you want to show on it. If you don't and you're just interested in FPL, then absolutely no worries. But let's get into this video. And again, Happy New Year and thank you for all of your support. So just to start off by having a look at how my team is lining up going into game week 20, we are officially halfway through the season, or we will be once the games are finished on Thursday evening, because of course there are still matches to go as part of game week 19. I used all 3 transfers last week, and actually I'm okay with the transfers I made because I bought Dorgu, which meant I actually had the full amount of 11 players because we had Richards looking like he's going to miss out. Mark Guiu didn't even get on the pitch, and of course Rice picking up an injury. So if I hadn't have bought Dorgu in for Rodon, I would have been playing with 10 players and a man down. I did bring Bukayo Saka back in for Semenyo. I'm still pretty happy with Saka long-term as a squad structure point of view. Maybe I should have just gone and bought Gabriel and gone with a double up on the Arsenal defence, but I'm quite happy I sold David Raya. That late clean sheet wipeout for anyone who's got someone like a Saliba, a Hincapié, or even a David Raya, with Gabriel and Timber having gone off before the late goal for Aston Villa. That was very painful, but having sold David Raya, I was quite glad to see him not come in with a clean sheet because, of course, Verbruggen only managed 1 point away at West Ham. But I've got one transfer and 1 million in the bank, and I am definitely considering a -4 this week. I just think with the amount of things I need to fix in my team, there's likely to be a hit at some point. If not, I'm going to continuously be behind the curve with just one transfer every week. So there might be a world in which I take a -4 to get myself back up to the position where I can maybe start rolling my transfers. But as of now, my team looks like this. I've got Verbruggen in goal at home to Burnley. Again, I'm just happy having a cheap goalkeeper. I've got Virgil van Dijk, Timber, and Dorgu. Dorgu with that late goal from Man United at home to Wolves. That late winner ruled out for offside. Again, what could have been with him as a pick, but still not too worried about him. He was just a short-term punt until Anderson and Richards, who are currently on my bench, start to rotate quite well again from about game week 22 onwards. So Dorgu with Leeds away, Burnley away in the next two before I can start subbing those two in, start having a bit of DEFCON back in my team. And Dorgu didn't pick up a yellow card, so he is not suspended. Then into midfield, I've got Anderson, who I still don't love. I don't see an obvious replacement in my team, and he's not a priority transfer for me. There are other things I'm looking to do first before I potentially look to sell Elliot Anderson. Bukayo Saka is in. Phil Foden is in. Let's see how he gets on Thursday evening, because his returns have dried up a little bit, but he does have Chelsea at home. And with the way Chelsea defended against Bournemouth and without Caicedo there, I do expect Manchester City to win. Matheus Cunha has been very disappointing since I brought him in Newcastle and Wolves, and he's blanked in both of those. Let's hope for a return in Leeds and Burnley, and he's going to stay until Bruno Fernandes returns and I can go back up to him with the money I've got in the bank. The final midfielder I've got is Declan Rice. He is still a doubt away at Bournemouth. Now, we will get an Arsenal press conference on Friday. The issue is Arteta is just not going to confirm anything. From the sort of quotes in The Athletic on Tuesday before the deadline, and also what we heard from Arteta, I do think it's very reasonable that I expect Rice to be back for the Bournemouth game. He's almost certain to be back for at least the Liverpool game, which takes place next Thursday. If they decide to give him another week off just to rest him against Bournemouth, I don't think we'd be that surprised. But it does feel like a very short-term injury, and there is a good chance he'll be back for Bournemouth. The issue is, I don't know, and I don't think we're going to know if he'll be back or not. So could I use a transfer on selling Rice? Yes, but could he end up playing and not need a transfer? Also, yes. Feels like we'll be going in very blind without much information, because also they're the 5:30 kickoff on Saturday, so we're unlikely to get any sort of early news there. And I might just be relying on Anderson of Fulham or Richards of Crystal Palace to sub in if Declan Rice was to miss out again. But we will talk about a potential replacement for him. And then up front is Haaland and Ekitike. Again, let's see how both of these get on Thursday. Haaland captain again against Chelsea. I don't see a good alternative outside of Haaland. Haaland is great at home, and Chelsea look awful defensively, particularly without Caicedo there. We know what happened last time when they played Leeds without Caicedo. So I think my team actually looks all right on paper this week with one transfer and 1 million in the bank. And potentially, if there wasn't players that I wanted to buy, like a Gabriel, maybe like a Tarkowski, maybe like selling Declan Rice or selling Anderson, I could look to roll my transfer. I think I'm more likely to take a -4 this week than roll. There are really three transfers I'm considering making going into game week 20. The first one is the sideways switch from Timber to Gabriel. Not necessarily because I think Gabriel is better than Timber this week. I also think there was a slight chance of Gabriel not starting away at Bournemouth. I do think he's not injured though. There was that sort of moment where he went down, he got substituted. It feels like it was a planned sub. There are videos of Arteta sort of telling Gabriel to go down, maybe waste a bit of time, maybe get a sort of bit of strategic information to the team, and then Gabriel was subbed off, and they did say he had to manage his minutes a little bit over the next couple of games with his return. So I do think Gabriel is fine, and I do expect him to start. Of course, there's a slight risk coming back from injury, but the spacing Tuesday, Saturday, before that Thursday game against Liverpool, I do think Gabriel will start. Again, I don't think Gabriel is necessarily better than Timber just this week, but do I want him long term? Yes. And is the value going to get away from me the longer I wait to make that transfer? Also, yes. The next one is Virgil van Dijk to Tarkowski. The long-term fixtures for Everton look great. And buying Tarkowski, you can sort of just start him every single week for about the next 10 game weeks. There's a couple of difficult away games, maybe away at Aston Villa and maybe away at Brighton in the next 5. But long term, you can just play him every week. He's good for DEFCON. He's not bad for bonus. Everton don't score enough goals, which means he can be quite good for bonus points when they do keep a clean sheet, which they have been doing recently. I'm also a little bit aware that they've been quite lucky. Their expected goals conceded over the last couple of games has been very high, but they've just been kept in it by sort of missed chances and Jordan Pickford. But I do like Tarkowski long term, and I feel like once I've got him, it will reduce the amount of defensive transfers I feel like I'm having to make, which has been a lot recently, which is forcing me into making moves elsewhere in my team, which I don't really want to do. Van Dijk goes away to Fulham. He then has Arsenal, and then it is Burnley at home. Could I look to keep him for Burnley at home? Potentially. But do I just think that Tarkowski is a better pick than him? Absolutely. And the final one is if I was to look to sell Declan Rice, it would be Morgan Rogers, who I look to bring in his place. I do think he's massively overperforming his data. I do think Aston Villa as a whole are massively overperforming. but the Aston Villa fixtures from this week onwards do look really nice. The issue is Rodgers is more expensive than Rice, and I've got exact money at the moment to do the other transfer which I want, which is Matheus Cunha back to Bruno Fernandes in the next couple of weeks when Bruno returns. And the more I start to spend that money on something like a Gabriel, on something like a Morgan Rodgers, the further away I get from making that transfer. But we're just not going to get an update on Rice. If I was to sell Rice, I would go for Rodgers over a Bruno Guimaraes, over a Anthony Gordon. I just trust him longer term with the fixtures, whereas Newcastle feel like better short-term picks. So just to talk you through my team and actually why I'm considering taking a -4 to buy both Gabriel and Tarkowski this week. The first thing to note is because I've not got many transfers, I need to plan long term. So on the Fantasy Football Scout website, if I sort by difficulty and I'm sort of looking at the next 10 or so game weeks from game week 20 to 29, Everton have the best run of fixtures for the next 10 game weeks, which is why I like buying Tarkowski. Arsenal are not actually as high up, but I like Gabriel long term. Gabriel is a player you just look to start pretty much every single week. And then Crystal Palace are quite high up there, hence why I look to try and keep Richards in my team. And he also rotates pretty well with Fulham and Anderson, which is why I wanted to keep him and why I bought Dorgu as a short-term pick, meaning I could keep Richards and I could keep Anderson for the long term, get Gabriel, and also look to go and buy Tarkowski, who sit right at the top of the fixture ticker for the next 10 weeks. They've got Burnley, they've got United, Fulham, Brighton, Leeds, Wolves, Brentford. A lovely run of fixtures, and even some of the others like Newcastle away, if you had to play him away at Brighton, away at Villa, is not the end of the world. Michael Keane, it sounds like he might end up being back for the weekend, although we don't have official confirmation on that. We will get a press conference later on in the week from David Moyes, which might give us a bit of an update, but he is also just short term. We're expecting Branthwaite back in and around game week 23, and I still want to have that Everton defender for some of these fixtures away at Fulham, at home to Bournemouth, at home to United, at home to Burnley after that. So I do think Tarkowski is the one that I would look at. So having a look at my team on plan FPL for game week 20 onwards, at the moment I'm lining up like this in a 3-5-2. Of course, Declan Rice is a slight doubt, and I could just deal with him and go to Rodgers, and that would actually free up the Arsenal spot potentially to go and buy Gabriel, and I could even do Virgil van Dijk to Gabriel and go back on the double Arsenal defence. However, I do think that Declan Rice is still a player that I really like long term, and I'm not sure I want to be taking him out and completely restructuring my Arsenal picks once again, which is I feel like is all I've done with my transfers over the past couple of weeks. So the two transfers I am actually considering is Timber to Gabriel and Virgil van Dijk to Tarkowski. Now, I completely get that this is not worth a -4 this week, and I might not end up taking the -4. If I was just to do one, I would say Van Dijk to Tarkowski is the transfer I'm more likely to do if I do just make one. But the reason I'm considering doing both is in game week 21, if I only make one of them, I'll want to make the other. So again, in game week 21, I won't have any other transfers, which means going into game week 22, I still then only have one transfer available. And it's likely that I'm going to have to take a hit at some point, right? Because in game week 22, I might want to do Cunha back to Bruno, as that's roughly the time that Bruno's likely to be back. In which case, I still don't have any transfers. I'm still not in a position where I can roll any of my transfers. So again, it is likely that there'll be a -4 for my team at some point over the next 3 or 4 game weeks. In which case, am I not better off doing these two moves, which I know I want to make? I want Gabriel long term. I want Tarkowski long term. They're both likely to rise in price. Now, Tarkowski is actually predicted to rise in price tonight on Wednesday, which is slightly annoying, and I don't plan on making that early transfer. But I do know that I want them long term, in which case, do I just do both of them now, take the -4, and allow me to be in a better position over the next couple of weeks? Game week 21, my team would actually look all right. Tarkowski's got a great fixture, right, at home to Wolves. Richards and Anderson would be on the bench. Anderson's got West Ham. I could actually probably look to roll my transfer. I'd play Dubravka over Verbruggen based on the fixture. And I could actually look for once to roll my transfer and have 2 available once game week 22 does roll around. I would, of course, still have money in the bank to potentially do Matheus Cunha back up to Bruno Fernandes. And that is also roughly the time that we're expecting Dewsbury Hall back in the team. And I would finally be able to move off Anderson to someone better like Dewsbury Hall and set my team up better long term. Keep double Arsenal midfield with Saka and Rice with nice upcoming fixtures. Have Gabriel and set my team up better. And as I said, this is also the week that both Crystal Palace and Fulham start a nice run of fixtures. So I could even line up with something like this and have a bit more depth and rotation in my team. So I am wondering about a -4. I'm not definitely going to do it, but although it's unlikely to pay off this week, long term it gets me an extra transfer and is also better for my squad value, which is why it's something I'm going to consider for game week 20. So then just to answer a few things that you are asking with your teams and the questions I'm seeing. Starting off with the fixtures. So right up at the top is West Ham. If you wanted to go for a Jared Byrne or you want to punt on a Paqueta, you could definitely still do that with their upcoming fixtures. A great entry point away at Wolves this week. Just be a little bit cautious of Paqueta because he did pick up a slight back injury. We are expecting him to be okay, but he's not definitely available. So wait for the press conference on him. Next up is Everton. If you wanted to go for a cheap option like Garner in your midfield, if you wanted to go for Pickford or you want to go for Tarkowski, still a good time to invest. You've also got Newcastle high up there. So someone like a Bruno Guimaraes punting on Anthony Gordon, although I'm slightly concerned about Gordon's minutes with all the games they've got to play, not just over the next couple of weeks, but then it's Carabao Cup, they've got FA Cup, they then have the Champions League. There is a lot of fixtures for Newcastle, so I'd probably favour more nailed players like Malik Chow and Bruno Guimaraes over someone like a Lewis Hall, over someone like an Anthony Gordon or one of the strikers, which look like there's rotation now. At Brighton, it does sound like Minter is not going to be available for Burnley at home, which is very annoying if you looked to invest in him. Danny Welbeck back, scoring one penalty, missing another, someone like a Verbruggen or a Van Heck, or you go down to Brentford or Chelsea. Chelsea not great this week, but pretty good from next week, and we'll talk about them in a moment. Or you could look at Brentford, the goalkeeper in Kelleher, one of the defenders, or Kevin Schade or Thiago, of course, going further forward. So as I said, one of the teams very high up at the top of the fixture ticket is Chelsea. And although Manchester City away is not the week to invest, so we still get another week to potentially look at how they're playing, which players we want to invest in. There's going to be a lot of focus on Chelsea from game week 21 onwards, starting with Fulham, Brentford, Palace, West Ham, and then they have other easy fixtures from game week 25 onwards that we will likely want a piece of investment in. The issue is it's quite difficult to decide who exactly we want to buy. It doesn't also help that there is a lot of unrest around Chelsea and Maresca at the moment, with a little bit of uncertainty of exactly who's going to be in charge of Chelsea once maybe some of these easy fixtures do roll around. But at the moment, if things continue as they are, I think you need to be going for minutes because, of course, just like we spoke about with Newcastle, also with Arsenal, there are a lot of fixtures to play. Carabao Cup semi-finals, you've got FA Cup, you've still got Champions League fixtures that Chelsea need points from. So there is likely to be rotation, which needs to be taken into account, which is why Sanchez is my number one pick. If you're looking defensively, he's likely to play all the games. Chalobah also falls into the same category. I wouldn't be buying Reece James. We saw with the game against Bournemouth, he is going to miss the odd game, and that is going to be too much of a risk with buying someone like that. Now, Chalobah has gone up in price, which is why I prefer going with Sanchez over him. But if you're looking for a defender, Sanchez is the one to buy. And then, of course, Chalobah. Fofana is too low down. The risk of rotation, the risk of injury, the risk of a lack of minutes is too high. He's not the worst because he's only 4.4 million, but I would be going for a safety of minutes. In terms of attack, Palmer is nailed. However, he is not playing enough minutes every single week to be worthwhile. And I am also not certain we are seeing enough from him from open play to spend the money. But if you do want to take a punt on the Chelsea attacker and you want to sell Saka as an example, I do think Palmer is worth the consideration. Outside of that, Enzo will play a lot of minutes. He's down to 6.4 million. He was very frustrating early on, but he is definitely one to consider again. He'll be on some set pieces. If Palmer doesn't play all the minutes, he'll be on penalties. But again, his open play threat hasn't been that great until he scored against Bournemouth. Neto and Caicedo. Caicedo, again, great for minutes, but not great for attack and returns, just good for DEFCON. And Neto is the one I would love to pick, but we just know his minutes are not fully there. Another rest for him against Bournemouth midweek. With the amount of fixtures coming up, there will be a slight risk with Neto. So I would prefer, even though his attack and returns are not as good, to go for someone slightly cheaper and safer in Enzo Fernandez or Palmer if you've got it. If not, just focus on the defensive picks in Sanchez or Chalobah. Next up is talking about a potential transfer which hasn't been confirmed officially yet, and that is Semenyo from Bournemouth to Manchester City. It sounds like Manchester City are the front runners and they might let Semenyo just play Bournemouth's last game at home, interestingly against Arsenal, before they go to sign him. Could that be a sort of first bonus for Manchester City signing Semenyo if he gets something against Arsenal at the weekend? But it doesn't sound like he's going to sign for the next fixture, game week 20. Of course, game week 19 still to play away at Sunderland. I also wouldn't be looking to hold Semenyo if you've got him, because I expect there to be a little period, potentially in that game week 21 fixture, where Semenyo doesn't feature for Bournemouth, but he's also not in the Manchester City squad. And we also know that Pep likes to ease his players in and not throw him in straight away. So I wouldn't be looking to hold Semenyo or even buy Semenyo, expecting him to start straight away for Manchester City. But I do think it has an impact on minutes. Jeremy Doku is likely back in the Manchester City squad for Sunderland. And also Turkey is becoming very, very popular. But Marmoush will be back from AFCON soon. They're signing Semenyo. They've got Cherki. And of course, they've got Doku and even Semenyo. That is a lot of wingers. And it does put me off buying Cherki a little bit, based on the fact that the points have already gone over the past couple of games, and the amount of risk of minutes and rotation that we're going to see from Manchester City and those wide players is definitely going to go up. Someone like a Reinders, someone like a Foden are not directly impacted, but someone like a Marmoush, who maybe was going to play out wide, someone like a Cherki also who can play out wide, might start to steal a little bit more minutes centrally, which could impact those others. So Semenyo, I wouldn't be buying, and I would still be looking to sell him if you own him. But also, if you are looking to buy a Cherki, I would be a little bit cautious of what this could mean for him. And finally, having a look at some of the best players to buy for you for Game Week 20. We will update this and do this in more detail once the press conferences are out of the way and once the games on Thursday are out of the way. We'll look at it again in the complete guide video. But in goal, I like Verbruggen for a cheap price. Sanchez is not great this week, but long-term I like. You've got Pickford, David Raya, Dubravka, Donnarumma, and then Rolf. Some of the upcoming Sunderland fixtures do look pretty good. Into defence, Gabriel number 1, Tarkowski number 2. The two defenders I'm considering taking a hit for this week. Malik Chow, if you want a Newcastle defender, is the one to buy and has always been that case in my eyes. Then it's O'Reilly. You could go for Mateus Nunes. You could go for a Gvardiol, but O'Reilly is now the cheapest City defender, and I quite like some of the upcoming fixtures. Matty Cash back from suspension and a nice run of fixtures for Aston Villa. You could opt for Ezri Konsa at a cheaper price, but I like Cash's attacking threat. Van Heck, and also a nice run starting for Spurs, and Van der Ven is back down to 4.5 million. Into midfield is actually really difficult. I find midfielders to buy very hard this week, but Morgan Rogers, if you've got the space, I really like and is my number one replacement for someone like Semenyo if you're looking to sell. Bruno Guimaraes, I would opt for over another Newcastle mid in the likes of Anthony Gordon. I like Kevin Schade, of course. Be careful, he plays on Thursday evening, so just keep an eye out for any injuries or anything that happens there. Bukayo Saka, I still like for longevity. Palmer, you could go with early in the eye of keeping him for the nice fixtures that Chelsea have got. You could also look at Enzo Fernandez, potentially Neto after he got his rest. Paqueta, just be careful. He did take a slight knock to his back in the midweek fixture, but a nice run of fixtures starting with Wolves away. And James Garner could be a cheap option, taking some set pieces for Everton until Dewsbury Hall is back. And finally, moving up front, Haaland and Bowen are number 2. I'm actually not certain that Ekitike is worth 9.1 now. I wouldn't be selling him if you've bought him, but I'm not certain he's the one to invest in you, with the next couple of games looking a little bit more difficult. Calvert-Lewin is next, and then it's actually Mane of Wolves, and this just shows how few forwards we've got I'd really recommend. He is 4.5 million and starting, playing a lot of minutes for Wolves. He could be a fine sort of third forward or someone you have on your bench every week. I wouldn't be looking to play him. Next up is actually Obi at Man United, the only 4.2 million forward now. And with the Chelsea upcoming run of fixtures, you might want triple Chelsea, so I wouldn't buy Mark Guiu. And finally is Watkins. I don't think he's worth the price. I don't think he's fully nailed, but he does look pretty good and could be worth a punt if you don't want Rodgers with the upcoming fixtures they've got. Very quickly, just to talk about chips. It is the week where you get your chips available for the second half of the season. The first thing to say is I would do your best to save your chips until we get blanks and doubles later on in the season. In the first half of the season, you could play them whenever you want because there's no blanks and doubles, but now you should be looking to save your chips. If your team is really bad and you need to fix it with a -8, -12, I would still rather do that than play your wildcard. Starting off with the free hit, the plan for me will to be playing it in a blank game week. We're expecting 2 blank game weeks later on in the season. We may even get more. It might be less, but the chances are it'll be 2, maybe 3 with a small one, and I'll be looking to play my free hit in one of those. Triple captain, we're expecting double game week, so I would look to play my triple captain in one of them, and I would also look to bench boost in the other double game week. I'd probably look to bench boost in the big double and triple captain in the smaller double. We don't have exact estimates on when those will be, but that would be the rough plan, potentially from around game week 24 to game week 37. We might get early ones like we did last year, although it's not definite. Wildcard, if you need to play it early because you've got so much to sort out, then potentially you can. I'd rather be looking at taking a -8 or -12 and saving your wildcard though. The plan would be to free hit in one of the blank game weeks and sort of wildcard out of the other blank game week to sort of set you up for the doubles later down the line. The general rule of thumb, though, is not to be using any of your chips until at least we get doubles and blanks starting to be announced. My general plan will be to, as I said, free hit in one of the blanks and sort of wildcard just after the other blank, triple captain in a small double, and bench boost in a bigger double. We will get better information and more confirmation of that later down the line. So that is all for my first transfer plans, first thoughts, anything, transfer talk, whatever you want to say this video has been called. I feel like we've covered a lot in this video, so we'll wrap it up there. I am considering a -4 for Van Dijk to Tarkowski and Timber to Gabriel, 2 transfers just to set my defense up well for the long term. Do I think it's worth it this week? No. Would I quite like to get Gabriel and just gain the value that I'm going to gain on those 2 players long term? Yes. It's a consideration for me. Any updates, I will let you know, of course, on Twitter and Instagram and in the next videos that we have over the next couple of days. Haaland captain, I'm just going to have to hope Declan Rice plays, I think, because I don't think I'm going to sell him. Although if I do, Morgan Rogers would be the replacement. Anyway, as I said at the beginning, thank you all so much for the support in 2025. Good luck in 2026. Happy New Year. And I hope the year gives you everything that you want and everything that you need. 2,000 likes is the aim. Any questions you have to be covered in the videos over the next couple of days, please do drop it all in the comment section down below. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll be back again very soon.